For more on this story, we can bring in France 24's International Affairs editor, Sanam Shantier. Sanam, tell us more about what this report has.
Delana, as you just mentioned, what's extraordinary about this report, despite the current circumstances, is that it claims that fewer people are living in extreme poverty. That said, the decline in poverty itself has slowed down. Let me break this down for you, and this is something that perhaps our viewers will be able to understand. The number of people that are living on less than $2 a day, try and imagine that, has fallen to a record low of 736 million. That's 10% of the world's population. Previously, it was 11%. So we're already seeing a drop there. Now, to delve into that, the most poverty-ridden regions are, of course, as you mentioned, the Middle East and Northern Africa. These are areas that are entangled in civil conflict, and you're seeing an exodus of refugees, around 2 million of them since 2015 fleeing from the country. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have South Asia, which has made rather remarkable progress. But of course, as you mentioned, it's not all good news. The report does paint a rather bleak picture of the future. And to delve into that, I'd like to bring in Carolina Sanchez, who is the woman at the helm of that report. She is the senior director of the poverty unit at the World Bank. Carolina Sanchez, thank you so much for speaking to us here on France 24. I just mentioned that the report, of course, outlines that we may not be able to eradicate poverty by 2030. Why is that the case?
Hi, thank you for having me in the program, and thank you for your interest. What we see is that really the slowdown that we document in the report is the result of a combination of factors, including a slower growth, particularly in Africa when we compare it to other developing regions, but also growth that, because of its nature, because of its composition, doesn't actually lend itself to poverty reduction, meaning that the sectors that are leading the growth are not generating employment, and certainly not employment that is benefiting those that need it most at the bottom of the distribution. And then finally, we know that in Africa and in many fragile and conflict environments, people who live in extreme poverty, meaning that they don't really meet minimum levels of consumption or income, are also facing other important constraints. For example, they don't have access to education, they don't have access to health services, they are not able to drink clean water, they don't have access to sanitation. So all these problems basically reinforce each other and make it much harder for these people to come out of poverty.
You're talking about very basic issues there: education, sanitation, clean water. What can be done at this stage to try and meet that target of 2030, or is it a lost cause already?
No, I don't think it's a lost cause. And I think what we try to point in the report is that business as usual will not cut it, but that we are still, we still have time to actually make it to that goal of ending extreme poverty in 2030. But of course, it's going to take that we focus a lot of our energies on this goal. Growth continues to be critical in this effort, but this growth needs to be a lot more inclusive. Specifically in these areas in sub-Saharan Africa and in fragile and conflict environments than it has been in the past. And that's the point that we try to make in the report. So the growth needs to be accompanied by employment, and we also need to invest in people so that they can take advantage of those new economic opportunities that will hopefully be generated by this new growth. And as you said, some of these things are basic, but because of the constraints on the ground, sometimes it is difficult to even deliver the most basic things that the rest of us take for granted.
Carolina Sanchez, the Senior Director of the Poverty Unit at the World Bank. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Delana. As we heard Carolina saying, the woman at the helm of that report, saying that there is a chance that we can perhaps eradicate poverty by 2030 if we revert to investment.
Yeah, at least she said it wasn't a lost cause, so that was some good news to take away from that report. Sanam, thank you very much for that.